U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has announced more controversial cabinet picks a week after his decisive election win, including a Republican sweep of both chambers of Congress. Now, that means Republicans will have the final say on approving Trump's choices to head up all government agencies. Speaking at his Mar-a-Lago resort in his first public appearance since election night, Trump said he was naming former independent presidential candidate and vaccine skeptic Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead the Department of Health and Human Services.
People like you, Bobby. Don't get too popular, Bobby. Oh. You know, you've reached about the level. Now, we want you to come up with things and ideas and what you've been talking about for a long time, and I think you're going to do some unbelievable thing. Nobody's going to be able to do it like you.
Kennedy, who comes from the famous Democratic political family, is a longtime health and environmental activist, but has raised eyebrows with many of his views, including questioning the efficacy of vaccines. He ran as an independent presidential candidate before dropping out of the race and endorsing Trump. Now, the two campaigned together, promising to, quote, make America healthy again.
We are the sickest country in the world, and this the sickest generation of kids. We need to bring Donald Trump to Washington and make America healthy again.
And Stephen Beardsley of our election team joins me now. This was not a surprise, Stephen, was it? But it is controversial. Explain to our viewers why.
Well, to be fair, in the weeks and days leading up to the election, the Trump administration was still saying that this was unlikely that he would lead any sort of department, because they knew that, I would assume they knew that could scare off some voters. But as the election results came in and they saw the breadth of their win, this apparently came back up to the forefront. So in that sense, it wasn't a surprise, and yet it was a surprise. I would say with the picks that we've seen over the past few days, it was not so much of a surprise. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is most famously, perhaps, the son of Robert Kennedy. Robert F. Kennedy is a legend, an icon in American history. He was former U.S. Attorney General. He was a U.S. candidate for U.S. presidency before he was assassinated, civil rights icon. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., his son, also has a legacy when it comes to his environmental activism. He's sued large corporations and won over environmental issues. And I think for his advocates, they see in him this man who cannot be bought, who's willing to speak truth to power. The problem is, for his opponents, he's a man who now chooses to attack the health community more than anything else. That's his biggest goal. That's his biggest target, is the health bureaucracy. And you mentioned vaccines. That's what most people will associate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. with right now. He has said very clearly that he doesn't think that there's any safe and effective vaccine, full stop. He has said that he believes that vaccines cause autism. He still believes that. These are conspiracies that have gone around for a long time. They are widely debunked. They go against every consensus in the medical community, and yet they still exist in many communities. And so the fear is that even through a nomination, much less an appointment, but once you get to appointment, already you see an incredible discouragement of an apparatus that's very, very important. We've seen the significance of the public health bureaucracy when it comes to the pandemic, when it comes to infectious diseases that may still be out there. So for a lot of people, this will be seen with great concern.
Yeah, but it's not just his stance on vaccines that has people worried, is it?
No, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has other stances that sort of fall in very much a similar tone to this kind of conspiratorial outlook that he has on vaccines. One of them is fluoridation in the tap water. Now, that's been done for decades to prevent tooth decay in Americans. And while there has been some controversy in the past about the safety of fluoridation, there's no scientific evidence that there's anything wrong with it and that it's actually advantageous. But again, this is another point where he sees doubt and where he comes in as well. There have been other things like the use of certain medications for COVID-19, ivermectin. This was a horse drug, I believe, widely applied in veterinary medicine that a lot of people, including Donald Trump, believed would be effective against COVID-19. Also largely debunked. He continues to press that. He's made erratic personal statements, saying, for example, talking about a parasite that he has in his brain at one point. Other things that are very strange. He talks about COVID-19 being engineered to spare Jews and Chinese at one point. So things that you can't really look to the side of. The problem is that he's also very persuasive and charismatic in some ways. He speaks to issues that many Americans do have when they look at public health, when they look at the state of American health. We know that America suffers from larger rates of obesity and overweightness than you would see in perhaps other countries, that there are diseases associated with that they're suffering from. He speaks to that, and he speaks very convincingly. But he also, in the same breath, he speaks against vaccines and a lot of established medicine that many experts say that you can't do that doesn't work. I think what we're seeing is really this kind of, he speaks to a crowd who in many ways has benefited over decades from the advances of vaccines and from medicine itself, right? We used to have a problem with polio in the US. Yeah. We used to have more problems with measles. We haven't as much since vaccines have been taken up. But because these generations don't have personal experience, they've lost that kind of institutional memory of that. And so a lot of these things maybe haven't been explained effectively. And into this gap comes someone like an RFK Jr. who can exploit that.
We only have a couple of seconds, but I don't want to let you go without talking about the Senate confirmation process, because all of these are nominations at this point. How hard of a time is Trump going to have, especially getting his most controversial picks through?
I think we're already seeing with Matt Gaetz, who is the nominee for Attorney General, for example, that there's a lot of sort of skepticism about what's going to happen during that confirmation process. He had an investigation ongoing in the House where he served. That was canned once he resigned on Wednesday. It's believed that will be taken up by the Senate. It's looking at sex with a minor, for example, so this is no light topic. Yeah. Senators have already said that they're not very sure about it. I mean, he is seen by many as basically a troll. He has no experience with the DOJ except being investigated by them for a while. There was no prosecution. Ultimately, there were no charges. The same was going to be is going to be true with RFK Jr. There are going to be those who look at this and say, I'm not sure, we need to go through a full confirmation process and see what's going on. Remember, Republicans have the majority in the Senate, but if 3 or 4 go over to the other side, then that can effectively toss a nominee out. So it's going to be very close.
Stephen Beardsley, always great to get your insights. Thank you so much.